I hope that you all are sitting very, very comfortably and that you are firing up your printers as I speak, because I am here to tell you all about the 2024 Bookoplathon, which is once again the Spookoplathon. So if you all participated in the Spookoplathon last year, you will know that this is a Halloween version of the Bookoplathon, which is a readathon that I have hosted in the past, which is based on a monthly TBR game that I used to play called Bookopoly, which is obviously inspired by Monopoly. I hope that you retained all of that information because there will be a quiz at the end. Just kidding, but essentially this is your spooky season board game readathon where I am going to be giving you a printable copy of this Spookoplathon board for you to play at home while I play with you. So if you guys are unfamiliar with Bookopoly as a concept, I will link the original Bookopoly playlist down below, because if you watch that, you kind of get a gist of how this works, because you will essentially be doing the same thing that I do in those videos. But if you are a regular here, if you know what's what, as everything is the same as it was last year, just with a brand new board. Getting into the logistics for this readathon, how does it work? It is a board game, so essentially you are going to be rolling 2 6-sided dice and moving a counter around your printable version of the Spookoplathon board. The main things that you need for this readathon are access to the mini board and also the Spookoplathon guide. Any information that I give you in this video can be found in this document, which you can find in the Google Drive down below. So if you don't retain all of the information here, do not worry. This is like 5 pages and very, very thorough. I said last year that we were doing one time only. We were going to go for the Halloween vibes, but honestly, that is my favorite round of the Bookoplathon that I have ever hosted and participated in. So we are once again going to be doing it spooky style, which means that this readathon is going to be running from the 1st to the 31st of October. Apologies for my lateness in announcing this. I was very, very unprepared, but I mean, at least we made it here. Am I right? So in terms of like where this readathon happens, I like to make this as low-key as possible. I essentially give you all of the information and the resources that you need in this video, and if you so wish, you do not have to see me or interact with me again until the readathon is over, or even after that. You don't have to talk to me at all. But I'm no longer using Twitter. Typically this readathon was on Twitter. I just don't go on Twitter anymore, and I don't want to be active there for the sake of like 1 month, and also there's not as many people over there as there used to be. So we do still have the Discord. If you are a Discord user, I do urge that you join us there. There are channels for everybody to recommend like books or all of the different prompts and stuff, people to just chat, talk about their progress. There will be nothing happening though that you need to be on any social media to find out. The only thing that's going to be happening throughout this readathon is weekly reading sprints on my channel, and if you subscribe to my channel and you keep an eye out, you will be aware of those anyway. I will also announce those and talk about things a little bit on my Instagram, but once again, nothing crucial is going to be happening anywhere. All of the information you need is in this video. Everything else is optional, extracurricular, and like part of the community engagement element of this. I will link the Discord down below if you guys would like to join. If you're looking for the community aspect, which is actually one of the best parts of the Bookoplathon, then that is definitely where you will find it. There are a bunch of people there that are active and passionate about books and reading and the Bookoplathon if you really want to like get immersed in this readathon. The things that you are going to need, once again, the most of them are going to be found down in the Google Drive. The most important thing you need access to is our new 2024 readathon board. If you do not have access to a printer, you can play this digitally. You don't need to print it out. You also can make a full recreation of my board if you wish. I've seen people make bullet journal versions so they can play in their bullet journal, and if you don't have access to a printer, you can always just pull up the digital file and use a little counter and a virtual dice to be able to move around the board. You are also going to need a counter so you can mark your place on the board. I use a magnetic bookmark, but obviously anything that works. You are also going to need 2 6-sided dice. It is kind of important that you have 2, but there is, as I mentioned, virtual dice software available. Like you can get virtual dice rollers on Google if you just type it in, and also like if you just have 1, you can roll it twice, but it is important that you have 2 because there is an additional rule regarding doubles, which I will get to soon, and also like you will move around the board much quicker and get to utilize more spaces if you use 2 dice instead of 1. The last thing that you're really going to need is your community shelf and your chance cards. So in the Google Drive there are 2 documents. There is one for big cards, which which is the same size that I use to fit my board. And there is one for mini cards, which are the size that corresponds with the printable board. Fair warning though, they are tiny. So if you aren't prepared to deal with that, then maybe go for the bigger ones. There are supposed to be 16 of each in a normal Monopoly board. However, I do appreciate that obviously this is just a 1 month readathon. So if you want to go for a smaller amount, 4, 6, 8, then feel free to customize this deck however you wish. The cards are for you to kind of add your own spin onto the board. So the community shelf cards are going to be a list of prompts. So like I have Patreon pick, an arc, a random letter generator, and what you are going to do is you are going to write a list of prompts on the back of your cards, and if you land on the community shelf space, then you will draw a card and you will then complete that prompt. These are quite handy if you're also participating in other readathons, because you can write those readathon prompts on the back of your cards and complete them throughout the month as well if you land on this space. The chance cards are a list of random books. So if you land on the chance space, you will have to read the book that is on the card. If you are looking for help or ideas of prompts, there are lots of recommendations on Discord from years past and people who have thought of their own prompts, and you can go and like browse those to get ideas. To make this more fun, I recommend that you add a list of prompts and books that you are excited about and ones that are less great. So the idea is that there's a 50-50 possibility of you picking like a good or bad card from the stack. For the books, obviously, they don't have to be books that you're going to hate or anything like that, but they can be things that you maybe didn't intend to read now, or a big book so it's not ideal to read it now, just to add that little bit of, I guess, more excitement when you pick the cards from the deck. If you do not have access to a printer, you can of course just write a list of your prompts and your books and use a random number generator to select the card that you would be picking if you were to pick an actual card. As I have said, like, this readathon is your readathon, and because of that you decide how you want to play, and there are two key ways to play this game, very much depending on what kind of reader you are. So the first way to play is the way that I used to play back in the day, and that is to make a TBR. If you are going to go down this route, you are going to select a number of rolls, you are going to roll that amount of times, you are going to pick a book for each of the prompts that you land on, and that is your TBR for the month, plus any doubles. If you are going this route, I recommend selecting a number of books that you are comfortable reading in the month with a little bit of wiggle room. So I used to do 5 rolls plus doubles because I can comfortably read 5 books in the month. And then you do also have, like, if you complete your TBR, you have the option of adding rolls on. The second way to play is more suited to you if you are a mood reader, and that is the roll as you go method. This is the method that I used for the first time last year, and I had the best Bookoplathon of my life. So I am going to be going along that route this year myself. For that one, you are just going to hang on until the 1st of October, and then you are going to roll, land on a prompt, pick a book for the prompt, read that book, and when you have finished it, roll again. You can combine these methods. I know some people maybe get 2 prompts, so they have options and books they can switch between, and then when they complete one, they roll again. Whatever is more comfortable for you as a reader is the route that you should take. I am going to be posting an October TBR, but that is mainly going to be all of the like book club books and stuff that I have to read for the month, and that is going to serve as my like pool of possibilities for when I'm rolling as I go throughout the month. If you are somebody who's potentially in a reading slump but you want to participate, or you are a little bit of a slower reader, I would definitely recommend going the roll as you go method, because I find that being excited to find out what I'm going to read next makes me more enthusiastic about the book that I'm currently reading, and I end up reading a little bit faster. And now we have the rules, of which there are very, very few. This is a very low-key, low-maintenance readathon. Please remember throughout the month that nobody is policing you. All of the prompts are open to interpretation, and that is specifically your interpretation, not mine or anybody else's. So you can do whatever you want, and literally nobody is going to care. So just remember to have fun with it and do what feels true to you. But we do have 3 rules. So the first rule is that everybody starts on the go space. This is the space that you would start on a traditional Monopoly board. I have had questions in the past, so to clarify those, you do not have to fulfill the go prompt before you start. Your first prompt will be whatever you land on after you've rolled the dice, but everybody starts on the go space, and when we get to the tour of the board, you'll see the go space and like which direction you need to move moving. The second rule is that when you roll a double, you have to roll again. So this is a Monopoly rule. If you roll the same number on each dice, so if you roll like a double 6 in Monopoly, you would then roll again, and it is most of the time, depending on where you are in the game, it is a bonus in Monopoly, especially like if it's early on. For this, it can be a little bit more of a punishment. So if you are going for the TBR option, if you're making a TBR and you decide to roll 5 times, but one of those rolls is a double, you will then have 6 rolls instead of 5. You have to add a roll on for every double that you roll, and yes, this can go on forever, and I have seen it go on forever. It's great. For the mood readers among us, you have options, so pick whichever of these seems right to you. If you were to roll a double, you can either roll again and then pick 2 books for 2 prompts, and then the punishment is that you kind of have to think ahead a little bit of what you have to read. You can also pick 2 books for the prompt that you have landed on with that double roll. Or what I like to try and do, doesn't always work, but this is what I like to attempt. I like to try and combine the rolls. So if I rolled a double 2, I would land on the TBR veteran space, and then if I then had to roll again and rolled a 6, I would land on the Becca rack space, and I would then have to pick a book that is both a TBR veteran and something that I have rated 4 or 5 stars, or a sequel to a book that I've rated 4 or 5 stars, and try and like hit both prompts with one book. And then the last rule is that if you do land on a prompt that you are either really stuck on and you just cannot think of a book, or you do not have a book that will fit their prompt in any way, shape or form, or if you just land on a prompt and you're like, I just don't want to do it, you can re-roll, but for a price, and the price is that you have to pick 2 books for the next space that you land on. The reason for this is that I know that a lot of people don't have a library as vast as mine, which means they don't have a TBR pile as big as mine, and so it can be more difficult to find books that fit more niche prompts. And so I wanted to give people an option to just roll again for a new prompt, but without anybody abusing that power. So you can re-roll, but there is a price. Like with last year's board, I have tried to leave the prompts as open as possible to multiple genres, so you don't have to be like a horror or a fantasy reader to participate. But because of the autumnal like Halloween theming of the board, it is a little bit more niche in some of the prompts than like the early Bookoplathon boards that I made. And there is one particularly tricky prompt on this board, which I'm apologizing for in advance. But on that note, let us get into the tour of your 2024 Readathon board. Welcome everybody to your 2024 Spookoplathon board. I really hope you guys enjoy this one because I had a lot of fun putting it together. I honestly did not think I had another Spookoplathon board in me, so I'm real proud of this one. But as usual, I am going to be bringing you a full tour of this entire board space by space. We will start off with the property spaces from go. This is the way that you travel around the board, so that's the way that we'll be going. After I've done the properties, I'll come around, I'll do the train stations, corner spaces, and everything else in between. So if you are a Bookopoly veteran, you will know that the browns and the blues, the dark blues, are the same on every single board. So these are the only ones that are kind of not themed because they are the same all the time. We have lowest rated as our very first space. For this one, you are going to organize your Goodreads TBR or whichever like bookish organizational system you use. You will order the books by lowest rated and you will read the lowest rated book that you are able to. And then on the flip side of that, if you land on this dark blue space, which is the last space on the board, you will do the same but read the highest rated book. The next brown space and the corresponding blue space, both very self-explanatory, is to read a small book or a book under 300 pages. If you don't have a book under 300 pages, then as small as you possibly can. And the opposite of that is a big book, a book over 500 pages. Once again, if you don't have a book over 500 pages, read the biggest book you possibly can. So moving on to these spaces that are new for this year, I'm very excited about these. The first ones are the purples. They would be light blue on a normal Monopoly board, but I only have one shade of blue paper. So they are the purples. And this one is based on a very common 3-card tarot spread, which is the past, present, future spread. So the first space we have is past. If you land on this one, you are going to read a book that you should have already read. So either something that you said you were going to read that was on a past TBR and you just haven't, or a book that you maybe bought a while ago meant to read and you didn't. For the present space, this is essentially a bonus mood read space, because if you land on this, you are going to read a book that you want to read right now. And for the future space, you are going to read what is known as a rainy day read, or any book you intended to read in the future. So a rainy day read is a book that you have set aside for a rainy day. It's a book that you keep putting off for whatever reason. You want to read it, but you'll never get into it. This is the perfect time for your rainy day read. Moving on to the next side for our pink spaces, we have the return of our famous fictional serial killers. So last year we had Hannibal Lecter, Michael Myers, and Jigsaw. This year we have Leatherface, Jason, and Ghostface. All of them wear masks. Sadly, could not draw Leatherface's though, so we have his chainsaw. So if y'all aren't familiar with Leatherface, he is the main killer in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but he is not alone. His family also play a part in the killings. So the prompt for this one is to read a book that features family. So this can be as a core theme, a main part of the plot, or like brothers or like a mother and a daughter play vital roles as like the main cast of characters. For Jason, I really like this one. You have to survive Camp Crystal Lake, and to do that, you are going to read a book that has 13 letters in the title. For Ghostface, I apologize in advance because this is the most difficult square on the board. Ghostface is of course the killer from Scream, and because of that you are going to be reading books that have sound words in the title. So this was actually harder than I thought it was going to be. So myself and my patrons pulled our resources, scoured our TBRs, and in the guide you will find a list of examples of words that you can use for this. The most popular one that I found was sing or song. There's also like whispering, crash, call, and a whole bunch. The examples are not an exhaustive list. Feel free to use your interpretation for all of these spaces, but especially ones like this, but there is a full list of examples if you do need a little bit of help. This is another take on the spooky season color palette that we had last year. I used all the best colors last year though, so this time we have Black, Blood, and Bone. Black is of course to read a book with a predominantly black cover, Blood is to read a book that has a predominantly red cover, and Bone is to read a book that has a predominantly bone colored cover. So for this, it's pretty much anything between white and like a light brown / dark parchment color. Any part of the bone aging process will work for this prompt. Onto our third side, we have symbols of witchcraft. So the first one is a pentacle, and for this one you are going to summon your next favorite book and read a 5-star prediction. For broomstick, you are going to cleanse your energy, and for this one you have to read a book that has a simple or clean cover, so something that has a very clean, crisp color palette or is very minimal and understated. The opposite of like a real fancy book essentially. And then the last one for this section is cauldron. For this one you're going to gather your ingredients and read a book that has more than one of your favorite tropes in it. So if you like magic schools and dragons, you might read something like Fourth Wing. Just 2 of your favorite tropes in one book. It should be fairly easy to figure out from the synopsis, and if it's your favorite trope as well, I imagine you buy books because of it, so you should be able to figure it out. For the yellows, we have the return of our horror authors. Last year we had Daphne du Maurier, Stephen King, and Mary Shelley. This year it is Bram Stoker, Grady Hendrix, and Shirley Jackson. So Bram Stoker is the author of Dracula. This one is super simple. You will read a book that features vampires. Grady Hendrix writes a lot of pulpy horror and also quite a bit of satire. So for this one, you are going to read a book that has humor. It doesn't have to be like a humorous horror. It does not have to be exclusively comedy, but something that has like a funny or satirical element to it. And then the last one, Shirley Jackson, is the author of The Haunting of Hill House. So for this one, you are going to read a book that has any type of building on the cover. For all of these as well, there is an alternate way to fulfill the prompt, and it is to read a book by each of these respective authors. So instead of fulfilling the actual criteria, you could read a book by Bram Stoker, Grady Hendrix, or Shirley Jackson instead. The final colors that we have on this side are returning from last year. I have had previous Bookopoly boards that have returning prompts, and I feel like these are just like super on brand for the Spookoplathon board, so we are using them again, and that is the spoopy, spooky, and stabby prompt. So when I wrote these on. Like, my interpretation of them is like something like a spooky middle grade or a Halloween romance, a horror, and a thriller. But spoopy means spooky cute. So it is like a witchy middle grade or like a witchy romance, like something that embraces the spirit of Halloween but is more cute than it is scary. Spooky is anything that means spooky season to you. It can have a spooky cover, it can be a horror, it can have paranormal creatures, anything in that vein. And then for stabby, it is like the slasher end of the spectrum. So things like thrillers, maybe true crime, anything containing serial killers, or like a book with blood on the cover or something like that. Going back around to the beginning, we will do the corner spaces. These are all the same as they have been on previous boards because I just like them at this point. We have go, if you are unfortunate enough to land on this space, you will use a random number generator to generate your TBR and pick the book that you're going to be reading. For this one, we have Becca. This is any book that I have rated either a 4 or a 5 star. Any book that I have recommended in a recommendations video, which there is a link to my recommendations playlist in the Spookoplathon guide, or any book in a series that I enjoy. So like, I like the Discovery of Witches series, but I haven't read book 4 or 5, but you could use book 4 or 5 to fulfill the prompt. The corners on the other side, our first one is feed scroll. So for this, you are going to open a social media of your choice. I like to use Goodreads, Instagram works well as well, but you are going to read the first book that you find that is on your TBR. So if you're scrolling through Goodreads and the third book is a book that you own and haven't read, that will be the one that you are reading. For dice roll roulette, this one is one that I invented that I love very, very much. So for this one, you are going to roll your 6-sided dice, and the numbers that you get are going to correspond to the length of the book that you have to read. Now, there is a handy dandy table in the Spookoplathon guide that is going to help you out there, but essentially each dot represents 50 pages. So if you rolled a 2, you would have to read a book that is around 100 pages. But for example, if you rolled a 9, that would be 450 pages if you added the dots up. So the length of the book that you would have to read is between 425 and 474 pages, but don't worry about doing the math. I have put a chart that will tell you like the page parameter for anything that you roll. Going back to the beginning to go through the train stations, these ones this year are themed on autumnal/Halloween activities. The first one we have is pumpkin carving. So for this, you have to read a book that has a face on the cover. It can be any kind of face. It doesn't have to be just a face. So it can be an entire person as long as they have a face. If it's like one of those romance Procreate covers where there is no face, that does not count. It also does not have to be a human face. Just any face. Our second activity is bonfire, and you are going to take some books to burn, but not really. For this one, you are going to be reading a book that you are thinking of unhauling, or it's one that you're interested in and you're not sure you're going to like. Something that you're kind of on the fence of, and that there is a potential that after you've read it, you are going to unhaul it. Our third train station is Ghost Tour. This one is to read a book with a historical element. It does not have to be straight up historical fiction, just any kind of historical element in it. A good example of something that would fit that is not historical fiction is Red Rising by P.S. Brown and The Will of the Many by James Islington, are both books inspired by the Roman Empire, but they're not actually set in the past. And the final one, so this one is my favorite one. You are going to attend a seance with your Ouija board, but not really, do not actually use a Ouija board. But for this one, you are going to commune with the spirits by using a random letter generator to generate a letter, and that letter has to be the start of the title of the book that you're gonna read. So if I was to read Somewhere Beyond the Sea, it would be because I generated an S in my random letter generator. And then our final spaces, we have of course our community shelf and our chance spaces. These ones are recurring around the board. I've already kind of explained to you guys what these spaces do. If you have a full-size board like me, your cards will go in these spaces. When you land on community shelf, you will draw a card from your stack of prompts, and when you land on chance, you will draw a card from your stack of books. For the tax spaces, we have TBR Veteran. This one is a book that you've had for a really long time that you need to read. And the other tax space is Here Amongst the Blues. This one is your most recent purchase. It does not have to be a purchase though. It can be a book that was gifted to you or the last book you borrowed from the library, just whatever was the last book that you acquired. And then I'm pretty sure the only other spaces I haven't covered are the utilities. So these are the same as they always are. I've just switched the places as I tend to do. So the first one, which this one's usually the electric company, this one is Pulpic. So for this, you are going to grab a small selection of books and you are going to get somebody somewhere, maybe on some social media, to vote on the book that you're going to read. And our final space is the Waterworks, and that one is a mood read. So essentially a free space, anything you want it to be. But yeah, that is our 2024 board. I hope you enjoy and I can't wait to play with you. So just a few things before we wrap up this video, because you pretty much have all of the information that you need at this point and you can go forth and start to print out and play your very own Bookopoly game for October. But regarding reading sprints, as usual, there is going to be weekly sprints on my channel every week of the readathon. These are going to vary in time. I am a big fan of a weekday daytime sprint, which I know isn't great for everybody. I personally love it, but I will try to add some variety with like evening sprints and weekend sprints as well. I am also hoping to try and rope in a couple of other creators to host a round of reading sprints throughout the month, so you guys have a little bit more going on. I'm also going to be hosting weekly Patreon sprints as always, and I do host a monthly or bi-monthly, depending on the tier that you're in, 24-hour readathon on Patreon as well, which has 2 extra sets of reading sprints. So there's going to be a lot of sprints going on throughout the month, which is always great. And I'm pretty sure that before we wrap it up, I just have one more thing to let you guys know, which is potentially not a great thing, but you may have noticed that this readathon announcement came to you guys a little bit later than it typically does for a month-long readathon announcement for me. And I am a never say never kind of person. I don't like to close off all of my options, but I've also made it no secret in the past that I do find hosting readathons mentally exhausting, like the prep, the logistics, the organization, the time commitments. Like, it is a lot. And I know that there are a bunch of ways that I can share the burden, or I can make everything a little bit more low-key to make it more manageable. But honestly, I'm also a person who believes in giving 110%, and I think that if you're going to do something, you should do it properly or not at all. And so I am here to let you guys know that this is maybe going to be the final month-long Bookoplathon. Like I said, never say never. Taking away the responsibility from myself may make me more enthusiastic to make a new board next year. But I do feel like as well, I've made a lot of Bookopoly boards over the years and I am running out of possibilities and steam for prompts. That being said, I have had some ideas in the past of different iterations of Bookopoly, different lengths of Bookoplathon that I would like to attempt, or different themes now that we've tested out the Halloween theme. So I'm not saying that there is never going to be a Bookoplathon again, but I just wanted to give you guys a heads up to potentially not expect one at any particular time of year next year. If I do decide to go with a different length, then I think that at this time I could only commit to one Bookoplathon in the year, where in previous years, if I've done a shorter round, I have done like 2 rounds in the year. I think the one thing that you can definitely solidly expect is that if there is to be a Bookoplathon in a year, it is only going to be the one. But yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. Like I said, I'm not saying this is definitely the last one, but I just wanted to let you guys know that, because your girl is running out of steam. But I didn't want to leave this on a sad note. We are gonna, if we are going out, we're going out with a bang, because this board is excellent, if I do say so myself. Remember, everything that you need for this readathon, any clarification, any information can be found in the Spookoplathon guide, and all of your printables are down below. So I do hope you have an amazing Spookoplathon. I hope that I do as well. I'm ready to read all of the books. But yeah, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please don't forget to like if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to. If you head to my description box, you will find everything you need for the Spookoplathon, as well as a link to my Goodreads, Instagram, and my Patreon if you'd like to join me on any of those. And may the rolls be ever in your favour. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you're go when nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.